Tuesday, March 11th, 3:18. This fine afternoon, talk about some of the names, talk about the market, some of the names I'm watching, and go from there. S&P is still down this afternoon, off the lows, down about 0.2%. Another rough or volatile, bumpy session. Markets hit lows at about the 1:30 hour and have bounced. So 552 all the way back up to 562 within an hour, and then we've been chopping around. Where do we close? Right, that's the big question. We have CPI data tomorrow, and then lots of headlines. Right, and now you have more back and forth between the U.S. and Canada. At first, there was Canada was going to slap a 25% tariff on electricity to some place in the U.S. that they supply electricity to. Uh, then there was some conversations between Canada and the U.S. And now they're going to meet tomorrow. And then it looks like they're going to put a halt to those 25% tariffs on electricity. Whatever it is, it's just more headlines. I just have in the back of my head that some of this is going to get rolled back a little bit. I don't know how much that will move the markets. Also, earlier today, a possibility of a ceasefire with the U.S. With Ukraine and Russia. Supposedly, Ukraine's open for at least a 30-day ceasefire. Waiting on Russia, how that works out. I guess Europe markets, their futures rallied on that news. Who knows how that all plays out? But to me, look at a SPY and look at where the market is. The RSI is down at 30. Last instances of the RSI hitting that 30 area, you have to go back to August, right? We had the big yen carry trade and all that fiasco. And then it happened in August, right? What am I looking at? Yeah. Oh, yeah. August. And then May was another time. And SPY was down at 490 back in May. So I'm not saying that it's the end of this pull. We certainly could hit, S&P went to correction territory for an instant before earlier. Not saying it's going to rule out that we don't have more downside at some point, but it looks to me it's like I think the probabilities for a bounce, even if it's short lived, maybe into the 570s and beyond, this into the end of the week, I think it. I would give that the higher odds, maybe like a 60-70% chance, as opposed to the downside. Like I think a lot of the meat's been taken off the bone, and the market's kind of found some footing here today. And also, you take a look at some of the risk on kind of scenarios in crypto. Well, Bitcoin up 5% today, and then some of these names that have taken on the chin. The Reddit's the MicroStrategy super micros rallying today. Some of these quantum names are going, so maybe even short term reversal. At least these momentum names starting to show at least a bounce, right? So we'll see how all these things play out. It's funny, you take a look at my charts, my annotation. I always say these are from years of annotations, and we came right down to 552, which is July levels, and bounce. So this is a short-term support resistance. I need to pull out and here are my spaghetti lines, but they're just support resistance where the markets have hit up against or found support against multiple times, right? It's 3, 4, 5 times when the market starts hitting those areas and reverses. Typically, it's either support or resistance. So you go back and you can see the line that 552, which we hit today, was hit back in September, and then it was resistance back in July before it broke through. So key spot there. Now we have that 563. It would be nice to see it close over 563 here today. And then now we have to, maybe that 200-day moving average comes back in play. All eyes will be on CPI tomorrow. If it comes in crazy hot, I think all bets are off, and the market probably finds more pressure. But I think even if it's a tad hotter than expectations, in line, if it's cooler than expectation, I think those scenarios, the market's going to rally, or at least bounce. So that's kind of that. And then look at today, the VIX. It's down 5%, and it hasn't really moved much today. It is elevated, but it was elevated back in October too, and at the start of September. So surprising to see where the market is. And then the VIX, if you had told me that we're near correction territory on the S&P over a very short duration of time, I would think the VIX would be substantially higher, but it's not. So all things considered, kind of help keep things in context. And maybe we get some other names, right? So this morning, Tesla, which has been it was decimated yesterday, that was finding a bid even with the market weakness. And then the lone kind of outlier was Apple, but Apple started to find a bid before. So if those names can start to go, I think that sets things up, at least for a short-term bounce. Again, Uh, I'm keeping things small. Weekly puts mostly. I'm not looking for crazy out of the money further out dated strikes just yet. Maybe at some point, but I'll definitely looking for bounce plays, especially in some of the names that have sold off. So that's kind of overall market. So earlier when the market was selling off, it's tough to find hedges, and all the premiums are elevated over from the sell off the last couple of days. So it makes risk reward on even getting hedge positions tough because we all know reversals happen quick, right? So Visa looked attractive. It was actually rolling over more than the market in the morning. Finally broke that 50-day moving average of 336. Got some spec 320s. Hit lows about 1 o'clock, 1:30. I was able to lock some of those out to cover costs a little bit. And then we had the bounce here. And I don't want to be in a spot where it wouldn't take much. Visa rallies 1.5%, 2%. The premiums are just going to get destroyed on the calls. Not only that, it's been like I said with this morning, like the Rock of Gibraltar hasn't moved much, even with this market weakness. And you have analysts out this morning saying, "Oh, even if there's a downturn, Visa and Mastercard should bode well." Anyway, so I locked those out just a little while ago. I didn't want to lose the profits. Definitely, I'll keep an eye on tomorrow, especially to revisit. I was thinking of holding them into tomorrow, but I don't know. It's been tricky, right? So that's kind of the thought process there. And then as the market was finding a bounce in the afternoon, some of these semi names, Broadcom was rallying. Look at some of the chip names, NVIDIA, AMD. So Arista Networks, the chart almost looks like it's pinching. So I was able to get the calls last week and lock some in for double the next morning. I'm not saying we're getting deja vu here, but certainly setting up. If you can hold green here, you start looking. I mean, it wouldn't take much for this to get 85, 86, and maybe even back over 90. So inexpensive, high risk, high reward spec calls into tomorrow, so I'll hold those. But it's kind of like you look at the name; it was 135 bucks at the end of January. Had the sell off on DeepSeek, so it went from 135 all the way down to 105 just on the DeepSeek, and has yet to recover that. And I'm not saying it should recover all the DeepSeek losses, but it seems like it just never got a chance. And then it had earnings, and earnings were great, but supposedly big customer sales or whatever maybe were a little concerning. I don't know. Uh, I didn't see that in the report, but certainly looks interesting here. So I'll continue to look for opportunities to play that one for upside. And then the trades I added yesterday. So Caterpillar looked great, relative strength to the market. And then sure enough, market was actually hanging in there, and Caterpillar was taking on the chin. It also hit lows at 130, but has since bounced into 340. Still like this one for a move 360 and beyond in the coming sessions. Not going to add anything just yet, but showing some signs here for a bounce. And then all these mid to mega, I wouldn't call them mega cap, but these mid cap bio names, the Regeneron, the VRTXs, the Biogens. I didn't even look at Gilead, but it's like they were all showing promise over the last couple sessions. Yep, even Gilead's red despite analyst upgrade this morning. And then all of them just got destroyed this morning like that. I didn't know if there was an analyst note out. I don't know. So very disappointing. I'll still hold those Biogen calls. It's the 50-day moving average there is 144 and change. Hopefully it can get above that into the close of 143.84 here. And it won't take much for that to get going. And then other names. I mean, Roku's back at its 200-day moving averages today. It's actually trading just a slightly below it right now. Another name that I would look for a bounce. And it's like if you pull up charts, you can almost overlay different names on top of each other, and you have the same scenarios where they reported earnings, they gapped, they ran, and then they've been selling off ever since. And even a name like PLTR, similar chart to Roku, right? So, not saying I'm playing that one. That one, I remember looking at that at $30, and it was, I don't know, it was $30 billion company at $30. I remember all these people hyping it up, and I'm like, I just didn't take time to read it. And then me, it's important. A good company, you need to have good leaders. And I looked at I heard like a clip on the YouTube or whatever. I was looking at a conference call, and then I went to YouTube to watch one of their presentation. I'm like, oh, I don't know, quirky character. And I'm not saying quirky characters can't do well. He reminds me a little bit about the Fizz CEO, National Brands, FIZZ is the ticker, who pretty much writes up a fiction novel on his press releases for earnings, not fiction novel about the numbers, like those you hope they're accurate. The way he describes it, it's like he's writing an adventure story, and it's like, oh my gosh. So sometimes you kick yourself for keeping yourself away. Similar story too is that Gorilla. Is it Gorilla AI? Similar quirky CEO, and you look at him. I'm like, I saw that one down. It was like $8, and I'm like, I mean, that went on an epic run. Then you have these short folks come out and poke holes in their story. But anyway, so all right, back to what I was at. But don't be surprised; those are the names, even if they're short lived. When you look at a Roku, and of course, I look at it, I think it's 100, 110, 120 plus stock. I I would for now probably just play short term data strikes, which is most times what I do anyway. And then other names. So Baidu this morning, I was actually, it was at one, it was 96 and change. I mean, now it's been holding the gains. And last week I was a little concerned because every time it looks like it's going to break out, it gives it back the next day. But this theme or story in regards to the US market, and then the DAX last week was all-time highs, totally outperforming the US markets, and same with Asia. And if the Asian markets continue, I think the China ADRs might be able to do well in spite of everything that's going on. So I was looking this morning. I'm not sure if I'm going to get some end of day, but could be one of those names. I just get some spec lottos. I was looking at maybe 110s for next week because even if the market just chops around here, I think there could be continued outperformance in China. And also, it looks like the US and China might have a little better relations recently than what it looks like, right? What it's looked like for a while. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.